Welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, or the Try podcast, where we try our best not to F it up. And today I've got Gary with me. How are you, Gary?
After that golf cart video, I'm actually feeling quite better. So
What golf cart video?
the previous video where the dude got hit by a golf cart. You know what I'm talking. You know what I'm talking
about.
about.
A week ago.
That was like 2 minutes ago.
This is the next video.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Well, this one we're going to talk about the Highgate vampire and Bishop Sean Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did I get that right?
That's right. Sean Manchester.
Hey.
He is the man who supposedly killed the said vampire. Took a couple tries. This is a longer story. We may have to do more listening than we probably do. I'm going to try not to commentate too much, but you do have to hear the story. It is quite impressive. But before we get into that, let's do a brief overview about the situation with the Highgate vampire. I would like to do a lot of videos on this, or at least 2 or 3, because there's a lot of individual anecdotal accounts. There's a lot of things that are glossed over in this particular. It's the one I did last time, the Slapped Ham documentary, right? So there's a lot more detail, but it does get kind of the core players right. So we're gonna go through this as fast as we can, just to kind of give a 3,000-foot view as to what happened, and then we're going to listen. Then we're going to listen to Sean Manchester's interview. So, all right.
This one's Sean Manchester talking about his.
No, this is the Slapped Ham.
Experience.
Well, the interview is about him talking about his experience. This is the Slapped Ham abbreviated version of the entire situation, because it was it was a long-standing thing that lasted for years.
I was looking at the wrong screen. That's my bad.
Oh, no, you're good. All right, so let's start with this. Slapped Ham, the Highgate, or the YouTube channel is Slapped Ham Mysteries, the Highgate Vampire. What are you doing? Why is it not clicking? Hang on a minute. We're having technical difficulties.
Clickbait.
We'll just refresh. Oh, it wants to play an ad. We'll mute you, sir. Kiss my booty. I resent that, man. You made me replay that just so you could put out another ad.
You're welcome.
What a load of garbage. YouTube, I can't wait till Rumble beats you.
Speaking of Slapped Ham, it's a question for our audience. I actually like Slapped Ham. I like watching this video. Do you guys, as our audience, want us to react to a full Slapped Ham video?
Yes or no?
Yes
if somebody ever deems to answer. And you can also answer in the comments section.
Separating fact from folklore. In the shadow of the bustling city of London, a sinister tale of the supernatural has captivated and terrorized its citizens for over half a century. Among the moss-covered tombstones and Gothic monuments of Highgate Cemetery, an eerie figure is said to lurk, its hypnotic red eyes waiting to ensnare unsuspecting victims.
So the first thing I got to correct is it's not there anymore. They got rid of it. So there is no said to lurk. In the 70s, it lurked. That would be the correct way to put that. So, anyway.
This chilling apparition, known as the Highgate Vampire, has become one of the most fascinating and controversial urban legends of modern times. But what is the truth behind this blood-curdling story? And how did it evolve from whispered rumors into a full-fledged supernatural saga? The first documented accounts of the Highgate Vampire date back to the late 1960s, when reports of supernatural occurrences began to circulate in the local media. However, even before the vampire sightings, strange events were already taking place in the area. In 1967, 2 teenage girls walking home alone Swains Lane near Highgate Cemetery reported witnessing a chilling sight. The dead rising from their graves near the cemetery's north gate. In another instance, a young woman.
No. I don't think that's right. Maybe I'm wrong about Slapped Ham. I think they're getting a lot of details wrong here.
Yeah, this is a Slapped Ham's different channel.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, those two girls saw the vampire itself. They didn't see the dead rising from the grave. If I remember correctly, and if it wasn't the little girls, it was somebody else, but the main apparition around the cemetery was a tall black man, like a traditional shadow figure, like what we've talked about before, and it had red eyes. So that kind of thing was walking around. If I remember correctly. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Because it was a single entity, as it were. So it was this shadow figure of red eyes. That was kind of the main thing. So...
woman claimed to have been awakened one night by a cold and clinging sensation on her hand, only to find prominent marks there the following morning. Reports also circulated about a tall man in a hat who was seen wandering the area before seemingly melting through the cemetery walls. By the early months of 1970, the situation
Yes, sir.
I gotta take a quick break. I'll be right back.
Go for it.
surrounding Highgate Cemetery took a darker turn. Several animals were discovered dead in the vicinity, their bodies drained of blood and bearing what appeared to be lacerations on their throats. These gruesome findings fueled speculation that a malevolent supernatural entity, possibly the Highgate vampire, was responsible for the grisly attacks. Witnesses described unsettling encounters with a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes lurking amongst the tombstones of Highgate Cemetery. As the story spread, they fueled the imaginations of paranormal investigators and thrill seekers who flocked to the cemetery in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the mysterious apparition. Enter David Farrant and Sean Manchester. In 1970, two charismatic
Cody Bocephus says, a tall black man, you're so racist, Gary. Hey, you're the one that made the inference. Those are your words, buddy.
and self-proclaimed vampire hunters, David Farrant and Sean Manchester, entered the scene, each claiming to have the knowledge and expertise to banish the malevolent being from Highgate Cemetery. Farrant, the founder of the British Psychic and Occult Society, and Manchester, the bishop of the Old Catholic Church, became entwined in a bitter rivalry that would come to define the Highgate vampire legend. Farrant was the first to claim that he had seen the vampire while conducting a paranormal investigation in the cemetery. He described it as a tall, dark figure with hypnotic, glowing eyes. Manchester soon followed suit, alleging that the creature was a medieval nobleman named Walthoff who had dabbled in the dark arts and was buried at Highgate after his execution.
Just for the record, that's not what Manchester says exactly. Maybe he said something different at the time, but I don't know if he actually describes who the guy was in the interview. The story is different, I think. So I don't remember any mention of a nobleman, but what he says happens, in case we don't get there, is basically a cult was like shipping a body around. So they were you had basically a satanic cult that was moving they basically rose up a body, and they were like conjuring up a body, as it were. And so they had a body in a casket, and they were moving the body around the cemetery. So I don't know if he ever actually described the origins of that said body, though. And so if Manchester said that, the odds are it's probably something he theorized towards the beginning of the event, before everything actually kind of like ended. But anyway.
It's on tape, buddy.
Cody says, your words, buddy. It's on tape. Okay. Well, you're the one that made the connotation with the words, sir. I wasn't even thinking about race. So you're the degenerate, not me. Ha ha ha.
Degeneration.
I'm going to send angry tweets about you and then not respond to your phone calls.
The tension surrounding the Highgate vampire reached a fever pitch.
What?
That's mean.
I know. It's almost like a high school girl.
In the lead up to Friday the 13th of March 1970.
Ooh,
Both
Friday the
Farrant and
13th.
Manchester had made bold claims of an imminent showdown with the vampire, and their sensational statements had spread like wildfire through the local community and media.
So tell me, Stephanie, why Popular Place?
Prior to working with
Gosh.
we never ever got.
Are there getting to
Earlier
be
that
more
evening,
ads? I feel like there's getting to be more ads.
Every 7 minutes.
Even during the, is it every 7 minutes now? Like on all the videos?
Some of them. There was a couple of them that I had it every 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, a couple every
Yeah.
5 minutes, huh?
Like I timed them. It was like, holy crap.
Dude, I'm gonna go back to reading. I am not watching this many commercials. We are not returning to the 90s. It's not happening. I won't do it.
Do it.
Watch our podcast, but you know that's just because we want to make money. I'm going back to reading.
You
though.
want to make money.
I want to make money. That's just
I don't want to be teaching the prosperity gospel.
Did I say I was going to teach? It's okay. I think I'd look rather good in Benny Hinn's little costume. Got that white jacket, flapping it around, slaying people in the spirit.
I'll be Cody's cameraman as he runs up on stage.
I'll be the pasty Benny Hinn. So, anyway, so Cody sent a heart. Thank you, sir.
Ooh, heart emojis.
TV had aired interviews with both men, as well as others who had reported supernatural encounters in the cemetery. The broadcast only served to heighten the anticipation, and within 2 hours, a mob of hunters from all over London and beyond had swarmed the locked cemetery. As the clock struck midnight, the group, now numbering in the hundreds, broke into the cemetery, igniting the chaos that would come to be known as the Great Vampire Hunt.
Dun dun dun.
Eyewitness accounts from that night describe a scene of pandemonium as people trampled graves, damaged monuments, and blindly pursued any sign of the elusive.
I love the self-righteous AI image here. Trevor, can you guess the subtext of that goofy image there?
They look more like zombies than vampires.
Yes, they do. What is the editor or whoever trying to say with this video?
They were zombies and not vampires.
No, he's saying the people were the real monsters.
Oh.
The people or humanity is the real evil.
Well,
Because this guy clearly doesn't even believe the claim because he hasn't even paid that much attention to what happened.
Right. Well, that's kind of like.
I regret recommending this video, actually.
That's kind of like what people are doing now with aliens. They're trying to normalize aliens so that when you walk down the street and your neighbor is like, "Hey, I'm an alien," you're not like, "Ah."
I think the proper response would be, then you should be deported.
Not that type of alien. Let's talk about
No,
UFO
this is some
alien.
pretentious thing about people being stupid primitive villagers. It's that dumb narrative. So, but anyway, so I regret showing that, and I double regret showing that twice. That was very stupid of me.
We could do a
'cause
better
now that
video
I've actually
next
done
week.
more research, because it's years since I looked at it last time, and I've done more research since then, and he's getting details wrong, I think. So, after listening to I should be more specific. Research. I listened to this interview all the way through, and I think he's getting details wrong. But anyway, we're gonna listen to the interview now. This is there's
And
two.
that's, let me clarify. That's not the Slap Tam that I watch or listen to. I listen to their main channel.
Ah, gotcha. Well, let me clarify here. So there's two. Essentially, what happened? Let's just simplify all the music and hype that we saw. Essentially, what happened was there were sightings of the shadowy figure, since Cody's being a racist, with red eyes. It was a consistent thing, kept up for a long time. And so two figures entered the scene to investigate, David Farrant and Sean Manchester. From what I understand, David Farrant, or Farrant, or however you say that name, was a bit of a showman. And so this thing got a lot of attention. Whereas Manchester was tied to the Catholic Church. And he was kind of, I don't know exactly what he is, but he was a priest, and he had worked on this kind of stuff.
Was he
the
part of
regular.
Manchester United?
I have no idea. He was a Catholic priest, and he worked on this stuff on the regular. So he was sent in, And him and Ferret kind of started this rocky partnership.
Was it a ferret war?
I don't know what a ferret war would even be, but
I just made it up, so.
okay. Anyway, so they had a rocky relationship, right? And so they eventually the news started interviewing these two guys because they were working together. And eventually that came to a head with everybody storming the cemetery, making a big mess. I think they eventually closed Highgate because of that event. But I don't know what happened with Ferret at the end, but Manchester was allowed to keep looking, and he eventually found it, and he found it twice, which is what we're going to hear about. Essentially, he found it the first time. They did an exorcism, worked for a little while, didn't continue working. Then they found the same coffin and the same vampire again, which is why he thinks there were some Satanists or something moving it around, because they found the coffin in another location later on, and that's when they got rid of it for the last time and the sightings stopped. So that's the abbreviated version of the event. This is Sean Manchester's account in his own words.
Yay.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Hang on. I'm not doing it. Y'all can kiss my butt. I'm gonna mute this because I know an ad's coming. Yep. Sure enough. Oh wait, no. I'm wrong. They just... You jerks. I time-stamped it, and they just moved it back to where I didn't want it. Oh, you guys could just suck on a lemon.
Lemons are good.
Good night. How obnoxious. Anyway, what a bunch of jerks.
Who?
Tell us
YouTube.
about
Google?
what happened.
Whoever's deciding the ad algorithm on these videos.
Google.
That person. Okay.
As far as you tracking down the Highgate vampire and destroying it.
As far as I'm concerned, it began for me in the late 60s with people like Elizabeth contacting me. I mean, there were others, and pursuing the matter to its logical conclusion. I had the good fortune at that time to have colleagues who were more trained and seasoned than even I, who were that much older. People like Peter Underwood, who's a renowned author of the paranormal, and he was aware, very much so, that these things existed, and he too wrote of occurrences in Highgate Cemetery in the 1960s. Indeed, it was with him that the early part of the story was first published in his own anthology, The Vampire's Bedside Companion, 10 years before the first edition of my own account, unexpurgated account, that is, the Highgate Vampire. But after the two convent schoolgirls, I spoke to a chap called, I won't give his name.
So those are the two girls that he's referring to from the Slapped Ham video.
But he spoke of a dark shape which moved across the path directly in front of him. On an earlier occasion, he had started to walk home with his fiancée down the lane, running alongside the cemetery. And they saw something standing behind the iron railings of the gate. Upon its face was an expression of basilisk horror. And again, the thing that was behind the gate appeared to dissolve into the shadows of the night. And that was a common description.
Dun, dun, dun.
But what pointed it in the direction of something more than a hideous spectre was this these other experiences. I mean, there was this girl I spoke to later, a teenager in North Hill. Her name is Jacqueline. Her brother vouched also for these experiences. I think he was slightly younger. And she awoke one night with something icy cold clutching her hand, and her hand soon went numb. The next morning revealed deep tears in the flesh where she had forced her hand free. Now, I'm taking that directly from her account. And she and her brother also had this fascination, as they described it, which drew them to the nearby Highgate Cemetery, the western side, the infected side, as it would prove to be. And it was only when we discovered the pulsating heart, if you will, of that haunted place that we were able to begin to get an idea of what we were truly dealing with. Although prior to that, the traditional antidotes and repellents, as with Elizabeth, had appeared at least to work. The use of those things which are regarded as effective in repelling evil spirits, vampires amongst them. I mean, the Catholic Encyclopedia itself states quite unequivocally that the Church doesn't deny that, with special permission of God, of course, the souls of the departed may appear to the living and even manifest things unknown to the latter. But we're not talking here of souls of the departed. We're talking of something from another region, something demonic, something which manifests as though it was the dead person. But it's something altogether more evil, masquerading, and what is the part that is beyond belief, the part that defies the imagination, is that there appears to be this ability to animate the corporeal form and almost give it sustenance. I mean, these entities represent a force which is really, any attempt to express it is almost impossible, because you're expressing the unknown and the unknowable, which invites scoffing, cynicism and disbelief. But such skepticism fails, nevertheless, to ensure the departure of these creatures.
So you're saying that these creatures, they're not the person that died reanimated. It's their body, their own corporal body reanimated, but it's reanimated by some sort of demon.
The agency is demonic. There's no question. There are various points of...
So what do you think? What do you think? You think vampires are the original person in some capacity, or do you think they are demons?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Vampires, in my personal opinion, are people, and they have a a fascination with drinking human blood. It's an actual thing. And
so, like, when you say people, you don't mean the undead, you mean like people.
People.
All right.
And they go so far into it that they it actually like triggers their brain into thinking that they are actual vampires. And with all the legends and stories and stuff, they create a whole scenario, and it becomes reality to them. And they then start doing things that are not so good.
See, I would just describe those people as Twilight fans.
No. Twilight fans are silly. No. There's groups. There's actual groups, and they have actual get-togethers and actual things, and this is an actual thing. They actually are attracted to drinking human blood.
I'm going to have to show you Bill Schneblin's account of that, because not only Was Schneblin a Freemason? Which I do believe, Bill Schneblin's account, by the way. If you listen to this documentary, if you go on to listen to this interview, you'll hear at least one phrase that Manchester uses that Schneblin also uses with regard to the, I guess you would call it the deep occult. And I don't think these two have met. And one of the things that I look for when I'm trying to evaluate whether or not something's true or false is like, okay, do different people who've probably never met use the same kind of terminology? Do they have a similar experience in terms of like patterns of behavior? You know, like I'm looking for, patterns basically.
Right.
And I tend to believe Schneblin's account. There's some similarities with how vampirism works in his account. Some with Manchester's account. So, I mean, as for myself, I have no idea. They make for great stories. It would be better if the person was still inside from a storytelling standpoint. But, you know, the thing is, with demons, their whole shtick is to mimic. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if it's not,
if
the dude isn't even there at all, and it's just mimicry.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's where I was going with it, was people get into the darker stuff and the occult, and they're already on this bloodthirst, if you will, and they're addicted to it, and then they get into the darker side and they invite demons into their lives, and then it becomes even worse.
Cody, shut up. I don't know what you're talking about. He said,
Said
you almost
nomenclature.
I did. I'll own it. Yeah, I almost said nomenclature again. Thank you. I need to get away from that word. I'm burning everybody out on it. So, no, I think
What's wrong with nomenclature?
I just say it too much. It's part of my nomenclature. Ha ha ha.
So you would say it's part of your nomenclature?
Is that a dad joke?
I don't know. Is it?
I'm going to say yes, and I hate you for it. No. Anyway, no, I'd say if they do exist, it's probably something like satanic cult might be able to reanimate a body or something, and it can walk around or whatever. Or,
you're talking about undead?
Yeah, like undead.
Vampires?
Yeah. Or they do a bunch of ceremonies around a body, and that produces enough energy for the demon to manifest around nearby people or something to that effect. I don't know. But, you know, again, if you're going to like try to study it seriously, and this is what I was ranting about the last time I talked about this, if you're going to study about it seriously, you have to, if you're going to take the anecdotal accounts seriously, you got to factor in all the details. You can't just go, oh, well, these are a bunch of stupid villagers who didn't understand that hair and nails grew after death. Yes, they did. They were part of the plagues that were going around at the time. They understood how decomposition works. You guys are just being arrogant because you can turn on a light bulb. Well, I have bad news for you. A monkey can turn on a light bulb. Try inventing a light bulb. So, yeah, I don't think these people were stupid. So, anyway.
Have you, when in your research, did you find the military, the Austrian army story?
The Austrian army story. It's
on,
ringing a bell, but I don't know exactly which one you're referring to.
Hold on.
Because I know the CIA's faked vampire attacks to take over countries.
No. This was the Austrian story from a long time ago.
Panama, actually. No, was it Panama or the Philippines? I can't remember which, but the army, I think it might have been the Philippines, but the army faked vampirism to scare the militia in some place like that.
Yeah, maybe we can do it next week on this, or I can send it to you now, but it's 18th century Austrian army, and it's the first account that I could find of people, villagers, going up against their type of vampire in their culture at the time.
Well, that might be interesting. Yeah.
And I also found just one story of Jacques Saint Germain, and this one is the most recent story I could find. And the CW network did a whole documentary on this guy. And
So what year did it take place?
This, let's see, Jacques Saint Germain that story started in 1904, and people in New Orleans still believe that he walks around New Orleans.
Okay, so it's still like a current thing,
Yeah.
supposedly.
And
Okay.
so this lady from the CW network went in to try and figure out if it's real or not. And Jennifer Marshall is the lady investigator from the CW network.
What'd
So
she
we could talk about
conclude?
that. She concluded that possibly the original Saint Germain trained kids, like people, other boys, to act just like him. And that's how he was able to keep the legend going.
So she didn't
But-
believe it. She tried to come up with a naturalistic explanation to account for all the facts or and whatever. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and in her findings, she actually found like full-on hangout bars of vampires.
Yeah, there's
People
a heavy
acting
vampire
as a
culture in
vampire.
New Orleans. I know that.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
yeah.
So
yeah.
I
But
thought-
that's just silly
I
people.
thought we
though.
could go over that
We can if you want.
later.
We can if you want. Yeah.
Later in another video.
Maybe next week. I wanna go over David Furrett's version of the same event and kind of compare the two stories. I think that'd be
Okay.
interesting. And then we could do that, what you're talking about, and the Australian thing. And then we've got the SSRI book I'm going to try to get done.
Okay.
So, Cody says, parasites or vampires? It's all the code to life in story form.
It's the purple.
It's the purple. So, yeah. People have no idea what we're talking about when we do that anymore. It's like we finished talking about Ammon Hillman weeks ago. We're still going, it's the purple.
Yeah, no, I was editing one of those videos earlier, and I was like, this guy's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Or no, I was reading the comments. That's right.
His fan base that is like just all sorts of mad.
All right.
And we make fun of that guy. Anyway. Okay. Let's go on. I want to try to get through his account, if nothing else, particularly when they killed it. So I want to see if I can find that.
They killed it? I thought you couldn't kill vampires.
Yeah, they killed it. Being
There's different ways
cagey
to
about
kill a
the-
vampire.
Being cagey about the. Let's go past publicity seekers and see if we can get.
The best way to take out a vampire is a machete and behead them.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I've never met one. I wouldn't know.
You don't know what show I'm referring to.
Nope. Is that Supernatural?
Yep.
If we ever do another fiction segment, we'll have to review that show. I can't stand that show. So anyway,
I love that show.
I know you do.
So we could go on and on and on and on and on.
All right.
Because there is 15 seasons.
Cody says Crow777 has had a Saint Germain on his podcast several times. He's very mysterious, knows a lot of stuff. Seems like he could be a few hundred years old. LOL. That is the beauty of the internet. So, make you seem older than you are. Anyway, yeah, that is interesting. Saint Germain. I have to look into that. Okay. I'm trying to skip ahead, but I can't find a good spot, so we're just going to keep going.
And there has been for centuries. I mean, even the James, King James, who obviously wrote his work on demonology in Latin, of course, and was himself something of a witch finder. He believed it was entirely a demonic agency at work, and only that, masquerading as the dead. There are others who believe that it's a combination, that there is something of the
Skip
personality.
ahead a little. Oh, you.
in fact, I think the only one at the time. The BBC one was later in the year. That really did set the imagination of would-be vampire hunters.
So now he's talking about the night all those people stormed the cemetery.
Yeah.
Alight, and
I can imagine.
the place became besieged with any number of vampire seekers, some of them travelling considerable distances. And that continued for a little while. It included university students, all sorts. Even rock stars, and I think
Wow.
I think not too long after that, although he's now deceased, Lord he stood at various elections, representing some mad raving loony party. But Lord David Such, not a real lord, of course, but David Such, who was a contemporaneous, of course. He was a rock singer, quite well known at the time. He tried to get in on the act, as did any number of people. And of course, the graveyard itself, although it had been used, I think, on a couple of occasions in the past for in the daytime, always in the daytime, for Hammer horror style films. And in fact, in the
How is it that...
well, it's bound to happen that once something has a profile as high as that on television and in both national and international press, and almost straight away people are referring to it in their sort of ghost anthologies, it's bound to attract all sorts of people. I mean, from the more serious student who...
Okay, we're going to move past the publicity seekers, and this should be where it starts, I think. We'll see.
And the police were in absolutely no doubt that this was the work of, to use their term, black magic devotees. And that had been going on for quite some time. I mean, decades rather than years. But that was rather horrific.
Certainly.
And there was other evidence that was not made public, which were quite clearly pointed it at black magic and necromancy and satanic ritual. The insides of some mausoleums, which of course most people don't venture to enter, betrayed all sorts of evidence which was unequivocal. But what happened after 1970 is that it became virtually impossible for these occultists with motives hidden in the darkness of the absurd to any longer use Highgate as their clandestine meeting place for nocturnal forays. And they obviously had to find somewhere else. And it's reasonably safe to say that the serious ones, the dangerous ones that certainly wouldn't want to advertise what they are doing, they couldn't any longer use that place for their ceremonies involving, well, corpses. And that all came to an end. It was slightly eclipsed by one or two, I suppose, cranks or people who were drunk after the pubs had closed at night, going in there for what they thought was a bit of Halloween fun, and it getting out of hand due to the excess of alcohol. But I dare say that exists in lots of places anyway.
Oh, certainly.
The notoriety of Highgate might have sort of attracted one or two more than you would expect at the time. But that was a short-lived phenomenon, and it was a small price to pay to end Highgate Cemetery being a mecca for serious Satanists.
Right.
And as far as I'm aware, although, of course, there were, I mean, I'm not going...
All right, we're going to skip ahead. I'm hoping that this is where it starts. So, yeah, he's saying Satanists were basically conjuring this thing. And so let's jump ahead again. If we don't get another blasted ad.
Or added
with
blast.
what proved to be, indeed, the Highgate vampire. And it's only when we discovered in the putrid chamber of that tomb in August 1970 what we did, and looked upon the horrific countenance of what was inside, have to be lowered on a rope.
Go back a little bit.
And it was in those catacombs that we made the discovery originally of a suspect coffin. And no sooner had we done this than that appeared to relocate very nearby, literally within a few feet, to a subterranean vault, which we located through someone else who'd been having visitations, not Elizabeth, somebody else, who, in a trance state, led us to the vampire tomb. And this would have been in August 1970. And there is no question or doubt that, having looked at the names etched outside, that there was one too many coffins, and the one at the rear, which didn't really even resemble the others, it was virtually black, which is unusual in itself, and more of a casket, and completely superfluous to the list of names on the outside. That was the first encounter with what proved to be, indeed, the Highgate vampire. And it's only when we discovered in the putrid chamber of that tomb in August 1970 what we did, and looked upon the horrific countenance of what was inside, that we had absolute confirmation of what we were dealing with. And I had already gained permission at that point, and that's what we were doing there, from the London Cemetery Company, though at that point it was calling itself the United Cemetery Company. It was a private company which ran the cemetery, as most private companies do, on its own merit. And they said that it would be all right, a spoken exorcism at the mouth of the tomb would be fine. But when we made discovery of this extra casket, we were dealing with rather more than what we had bargained for. And it was quite terrifying, because we were thrown in, I particularly was thrown in at the deep end, and we were confronting something with a few spoken Latin words that in the event would prove ineffective. I mean, I think we used 7 crucifixes, 4 white candles, 4 cups of holy water in the ceremony, carried out by 4 men and a woman, myself being one of the 4 men, on that August afternoon, to banish the spirits of evil, or the evil presence, using the Latin formula. And news of the spoken exorcism did indeed bring a sigh of relief to many living in the area. And a good many more considered this to be the final chapter of what had been a terrifying case of 20th century vampirism. Even some of my colleagues thought that this will be an end to it. But anyone believing that the Highgate vampire had passed into legend in that summer were in for a nasty shock. Those who breathed with relief would find such relief very short-lived, because strange occurrences failed to cease, and more horrifying incidents ended any hope that we'd quietened the disturbance with a mere spoken exorcism rite. further vampiric outrages were to follow. And I think it's at some time after that. I mean, the cemetery officials did brick up that particular vault, and I don't know whether you have a copy, but in my book there is a photograph of the bricked up vault. It was bricked and cemented, and with a crucifix and holy water remaining inside. But whether or not that was before or after, it didn't remain bricked up for very long. Today it isn't bricked up at all, but of course today everything's quiet at Highgate Cemetery. What did happen was that particular casket was relocated elsewhere, and where it was relocated was not terribly far away. It was on the borders of Highgate, but it was a derelict neo-Gothic mansion, actually, in the subterranean bowel, the cellar of that place. And my own view is that the casket was taken there by these same occultists that perhaps would belong to a vampire cult, who were living emissaries to the same evil. And it was there that the final and most effective of all exorcisms that can take place occurred. Without going through all of the detail, we, upon its discovery, dragged the casket from the basement up the stairs into the grounds of the rear of the derelict building, at which time dawn was about to break, starting to send spears of bright illumination on to the macabre spectacle below. And one assistant had by this point quit, but I was left with Arthur, who rushed to fetch my accoutrements and returned with them. And eventually, when the lid was removed and we beheld the same thing that I had seen in August 1970, this was now the early part of 1974, something which had very much remained stained on my memory. Our quarry looked, this time, even more exaggerated, more distorted than I remember it. Far worse than even that time in the Highgate vault. Burning, fierce eyes beneath furrowed brows, staring with almost hellish reflection, yellow at the edges with blood-red centers, unlike anything imaginable.
Wow.
The mouth set in a cruel expression, lips drawn back. It was as if the entire demonic form had not long ended its, if one can describe it as slumber, its slumber. It's difficult to talk in these material terms about something which defies, or appears to defy, human mortality, and it's said to cast no reflection or shadow. One has to be aware of things like antimatter, that's made up of atoms consisting of only antiparticles, unable to exist in the presence of normal matter. We're familiar with three dimensions, before, now, and after. These concepts of normal time, past, present, and future, don't exist in anti-time. This somewhat restricts us when trying to comprehend the world of the vampire, whose conscious energy, such as it is, exists outside of all ties of time. And the corporeal shell, which is occupied, is also transformed. It isn't merely a vehicle. It is, during that supernatural possession, transformed. It can manifest elsewhere and otherwise. It can become what it isn't. It has an unbelievable ability, which once the demonic agency has been removed, it ceases immediately to have. Their nether world is connected as a force to lend supernatural power, and the exorcism mysteriously reverses the process, and the being, that is to say the corporeal shell, returns to earthly time, some with a bang, when the evil contamination is expelled. Of course, the evil, supernatural evil, is removed. It isn't destroyed, but the supernatural condition is destroyed of the afflicted corpse, or what seems to be the afflicted corpse.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. You get the idea. He basically, him and his team basically exorcised the demon a second time after it was relocated. And that put an end to the Highgate vampire. So, Trevor, what do you think?
That was creepy.
It's creepy. It's creepy. It's quite a odd story.
It's a good story.
Well, I think next week we'll go over David Ferrett's account, see what lines up, what doesn't. I kind of think David Ferrett's more of a showman.
Yeah, the question is, was it real or not?
I think it was real. I think. Wouldn't bet my house on it, but, you know.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, it's entirely plausible. And he's got some details that make me think he's probably telling the truth. Like, he's trying to explain the functionality of how all this works, even if it seems a little boring and over people's heads. And I don't know, sometimes, you know, that can be an indicator of truth-telling, I think. So.
Well, plus you could hear it in his voice. He was starting to get kind of scared in his head, recalling the events.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear him go more and kind of drawing it out more as time goes on. You can hear that anxiety kick up.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we'll compare stories next week, but I think we're done for tonight. Trevor, do you have any final thoughts, good sir?
Not unless you want me to.
I want you to.
Oh. Yeah, I think as far as this goes, don't get into the occult. First and foremost.
Moral of the story, stay out. Yeah.
Yeah, it will mess you up. But yeah. I don't know.
All right. Well, if you want to watch the interview in its entirety, the YouTube video is called Highgate Vampire, Bishop Sean Manchester. The YouTube channel is called World of the Unexplained. It is World of the Unexplained. So if you are curious about the rest of that interview, go ahead and check that out at your leisure. For us, anyway, we're done. And
D-U-N.
D-O-N-E. So
No, D-U-N.
D-U-N. All right, okay. We'll worry about spelling later. For now, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. If you did, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Rumble. We can also be found on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you again very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.